Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Milford Zoning Board hearing. First of all, we've got a couple of housekeeping issues. One of them being the minutes from the February 21st hearing for Robsham Village. Do I have a motion to accept? Motion by Charlie. I have a second. Second by Mark. All those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. I just made Melissa very happy. Okay, continuing on, we have from the March 8th, minutes from the March 8th meeting. I'm sure everybody had an opportunity to review these already. I have a motion for acceptance. Motion by Charlie to accept. Second. Second by John. All those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. And since this is the first meeting after the election, this is a housekeeping issue, so again, we go through this every annual meeting. So the pleasure of the board for chairman and vice chairman, I'd need to take a motion. Do I have a motion anywhere?
I'll nominate Dave does such an outstanding job.
Once again, I'm getting railroaded here. Is there a second? Of course you would. All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Do I have a motion for vice chairman?
I'll nominate Mr. D'Antonio.
I have a motion from Charlie for vice chair. Have a second? Second by John and Mark. All those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, on to business. Anyone here for the 40B tonight? Okay, we've got two quick hearings before that, and then we're going to dive right into the presentation for the residents of Stone Ridge project. First off, we'll go with the scheduled hearing at 7:05 on the application of J.H.M. Fortune LLC, Jasmine Hotel Management. They present? Come on up to the microphone. This is for a special permit of variance relief as necessary in relation to an 83,000 square foot more or less parcel of land located on the southerly side of Fortune Boulevard, known and numbered as 3 Fortune Boulevard, which parcel is currently being utilized as a Best Western Hotel. The relief sought is to permit the establishment of a new swimming pool on the site, which, if permitted, would require the reduction of 10 parking spaces, leaving a total of 65 spaces. With that in the application, the planning board has reviewed this on its 4/17, recommended an unfavorable report, see town planner's letter, and I'll paraphrase the letter. The applicant is proposing a 15 by 27 outdoor swimming pool with a 40 by 50 foot fenced area to the rear of the motel building. The plan submitted with the application inaccurately represents the actual existing conditions. It appears to rely on an outdated plan not reflective of what was approved in 2006 and subsequently built. The site currently provides a one-way drive with 21 angled parking spaces in front of the building to accommodate the existing covered main entrance drop-off area. The site also currently contains 72 total parking spaces, which is the minimum required for the 65-room hotel, a reduction from the original 68 rooms prior to 2006. The plan ignores the previous approval and circulation pattern, depicts 23 perpendicular parking spaces where only 21 angled spaces actually exist, and will further eliminate 10 more existing parking spaces in the vicinity of the proposed pool. This would result in 65 spaces, or a deficit of 7 spaces overall. Since the variance application was not submitted, it is unclear what actually hardship is being claimed. Reducing parking for the proposed seasonal use is ill-advised. Therefore, they recommend a negative report be sent off to the ZBA. I do have a letter that I'll read into the file. I'll paraphrase it as best I can. This is from PVI Site Design Services. On behalf of Jasmine Hotel, please find the proposed site plan dated March 2018. 63-room hotel with 74 parking spaces, doing business as a Best Western. In order to accommodate the new pool, there will be a reduction of 9 parking spaces for a total of 65 on the property. As a 63-room hotel, the required number of spaces is 70. Therefore, relief is sought from Section 3.4 for off-street parking requirements. If successful in obtaining a special permit, the applicant will submit site plan approval to the Planning Board and the Conservation Board. Concerning the application aspect that was submitted, it does ask a few questions that are pertinent to the current application. It basically indicates, please explain the special permit sought if it was in harmony with the general purpose of the bylaw. The application states that the addition of the pool does not materially change the intensity and the existing use. Concerning the question, the proposed use of the premises will not create undue traffic or congestion or impair the pedestrian safety aspects of the site. The applicant states the addition of the pool does not materially change the intensity of the existing use. Concerning the question of the proposed use of the premises will not cause harm to the neighborhood or create a nuisance or hazard affecting the health, welfare, and safety of the general public, the applicant indicates that the addition to the pool does not materially change the intensity of the existing use. With that, sir, I'll turn it over to you, and please give us an idea what you're trying to do.
Sure. Do I need a microphone?
One right here, there, yeah.
Should be on file. Red button at the bottom, push and hold it. There you go. You have to bring it up close.
How's that? Good? Okay. First of all, Tim Power from PVI Site Design, the civil engineer for the applicants. Fairly straightforward proposal. Existing hotel use with a proposed outdoor pool at the southeasterly corner of the building as depicted on the plan. To accommodate the pool, there would be a reduction of the 9 parking spaces as noted in the letter. And I would just like to say we're putting our best foot forward here. However, this is being driven by the Best Western flag. The hotel operator is trying to follow some requests of that flag, and this obviously presents some cost for him to build this pool to go from there. But so I won't spend too much time on it. We are, the basic of what we're requesting is the reduction in 9 spaces to accommodate the pool for the hotel.
Okay, thank you. Question from board members.
Yeah, when you look at the reduction of parking spaces, how does the hotel management feel about that? Are they saying that they don't fill up all the spaces all the time, or what's their argument on that?
No, and there are actually 5 spaces that are just off the property, which I believe are implied to be shared. I'm not sure if there's actual easement there or not. So with that, with those 5 spaces that are just off the property, they're shown on the northern end of the property near the entrance. You're up to 70 spaces usable within the general parking area. So they're comfortable if they do need to.
So what you're saying is they believe that the addition of the pool would not affect their customer service?
Correct.
I have a quick question. The application is conflicting to what's on the ground. It's indicated through the town planner that someone's working off the wrong approved plan. Have you been advised to that?
Yes, and I actually confirmed with our survey company, and I think I've tracked down what has happened. So prior to this building owner owning the hotel, I believe the previous approval that the town planner referenced was sought and achieved for the drop-off and to change the angled parking and the one-way circulation. At that time, there's some the Google Street View photos do show that there's some angled parking there. Subsequent to that, and I think before this owner bought the building, the parking lot was either seal-coated or repaved in some fashion and restriped back to head-in spaces. So if you do go out there today, they're head-in spaces. And I had the opportunity to drive by and confirm that because I wasn't sure. So I'm not sure if the town planner had a chance to drive out there, but I can see how there's a conflicting record plans on this site.
Yeah, there was a reduction on behalf of Best Western back in '06, which you should have had 72 parking spaces, and the reduction went to 68. And now you're asking to reduce it further. But we're not dealing with the same plan. Is there a way that you can get to your engineers and everybody can stay on the same page and work with the same plan?
So I can track down the older plans. However, this was a brand new survey done on the ground recently, within the past year, and then our site design is here. So this is actually an accurate representation of what is on the ground today.
But it's not the permitted plan that originally went with the property.
I guess I would acknowledge that, and that at some point someone had seal coated and restriped it incorrectly.
But you should be working from the original plan, not a new plan. You can reference from the old plan to a new plan and show those changes from the original plan that was approved. That's where the conflict is. You're generating a new plan on something that you're trying to get permitted, that's something that has already been permitted originally. We need to get your engineer in line with our engineer so that everybody's on the same page. That's all. I think that's all that really needs to happen.
Sure.
You've got to reference that original plan that was approved. I'm not talking about parking lot striping. I'm talking about the actual plan that was approved originally.
Yep. So is that something we could just do as a reference to, refer to the approval, on the drawing, so to speak?
I'll refer it to board members. I don't know if I'm comfortable, but I can certainly refer to my board members, and they can certainly comment on what they'd like to comment on.
I don't have any problem.
Quick question. The 27 by 15 pool,
Yes?
is that required by Best Western Corp?
They didn't have an exact dimension on the pool size.
So that could be reduced.
It could be. I'd have to confirm what their minimal size is.
But if it was reduced, would that help putting maybe 4 or 5 more of those parking spaces back?
I'm not sure if we'd materially get them back because of, it's really the square of the pool patio. And no matter any amount of the length of that shows up against the hotel is going to impact the spaces that are lost. Really, just the pool, I mean, if we reduce the width, maybe you get 1 or 2 back, but
But there's a possibility there.
yes,
Okay. Second question, this is going to be a seasonal pool, obviously.
yes.
So
The owner, I don't think, is actually very interested in building the pool, but he's being obligated.
I'm getting
by
that
Best
impression.
Western. So, yeah.
So to try to get the use out of it, is it going to be a heated pool? I'm just asking because is it going to be an extended season or?
I don't have the answer to that if they would heat it or not. I'd
It
assume
seems
they,
they're putting a lot of effort into something that nobody wants.
right.
Oh, okay. As long as we're on the same page with that, too.
Correct.
All right, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Bob?
Anyone else on the board? Anyone in the audience want to be heard on this? If not, you have the last word before the close the hearing, and we'll take it under advisement and vote.
Sure. So I guess I appreciate that there's some previous plan approval that to be caught up here, but I think as pointed out by the last board member, it's the hotel owner and operator is being obligated by Best Western to apply for this pool, but he's sort of indifferent as if to whether it or not it gets approved and moves forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have two conflicting aspects here. We don't have to, but I mean, I'm not comfortable because we're not dealing with the right site plan.
But it's an accurate site plan, though. It's one that they actually engineered. It's actually what's there.
Yep. There's a motion from Mark to not approve. Is there a second on the motion? John, there's a second. All those in favor not approving? There's 4 in favor. Opposed? 1 opposed. So there's your decision. Not approved. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, as we move on to the second application, that being past 7:10. This is, when you get a minute, Kelly, can you see if they can shut this light off? It's kind of blinding me until we have the 40B. It's, yeah, because it's flashing in my eyes. Thank you. On the application of Louis Santos, Santos Garage, 12 Free Street in Milford, for special permit relief in section 3.1 of the zoning bylaw in relation to a parcel of land locating on the northwesterly side of West Street, known and numbered as 69 West Street, which property is currently owned by Weather Shield, Inc. The special permit relief is sought in order to permit the change of the use of the property from the prior and current commercial uses in order to allow the property to be used as an auto body shop and auto repair and towing, together with the sale of unregistered vehicles. Pull the folder. Concerning the application, the current applicant has a Class 2 sales license and would have approximately 15 to 20 unregistered vehicles on the site for sale. Before the current use, the location was used as a steel fabricator, and as prior use to that, located actually it was a Barati Automotive. I had a feeling that was an automotive use before. Explain the reasons why the special permit is in harmony with the general purpose and the intent of the bylaw. The applicant states that the proposed change of use will not expand the nonconformity and will determinately affect the abutters or character of the neighborhood. As noted above, the premises have been a commercial use for a prolonged period of time. Other commercial uses exist in the neighborhood, including a budding package store and collision repair center. Concerning the question to the applicant, the proposed use of the premises will not create undue traffic congestion and impair pedestrian safety. The applicant states the building located on 69 West Street is set back a considerable distance from the street in comparison to the neighborhood buildings. With the change of use, there's not an expectation of changing traffic patterns for any reason to believe congestion or pedestrian risks would be augmented. And then also the other question that was proposed, use of the premises will not cause harm to the neighborhood or create a nuisance or hazardous affecting the health, safety, and welfare of the general public. The applicant states that the use is a low-impact commercial use that will not cause a dissimilar amount of impact on the neighborhood when compared to the current use. The business will operate during normal business hours and will not cause undue harm or a nuisance. This did go in front of the planning board on their 417 meeting. And recommends the following. The planning board suggested a favorable recommendation subject to the amended site plan being approved by the planning board to determine the actual number of placement of vehicles to be displayed. Town planner letter and paraphrasing indicates that the applicant proposes to replace the former sign company and contractor's yard with an auto body shop, auto sales and repair, and a towing operation. No building additions are being proposed. The proposed use would include the placement of 15 to 20 unregistered vehicles on site. However, no site plan has been submitted to indicate compliance with parking requirements and a suitable location for a sales display area. Therefore, they recommend a favorable report on to this board, subject to an amended site plan being approved by the planning board to determine the actual number and placement of vehicles displayed. With that, Attorney Antonellis, you have the podium.
Good evening. Thank you. Joseph Antonellis on behalf of the applicant. With me tonight is my associate, Eli Lenio, as well as the applicant, Mr. Santos and his son. This is a family business that is presently housed on 12 South Free Street in Milford. The intention is to move to the West Street property and to conduct the business in the same manner as it has been successfully conducted on Free Street. Mr. Santos has been a businessman here in Milford for quite some time. He actually has 9 tow trucks in his fleet, is obviously very busy in the area, and is involved, as I said, in this business with his family. He would intend to have approximately 12 to 15 employees on the site, 9 of whom are usually tied up in the tow trucks, 3 or 4 of whom are acting in the mechanical area. I think as you can see if you visited his other site, it's a busy site. The particular use of this site goes back a long way as a non-conforming use. I remember it specifically as Barati Brothers with Meldonian's supermarket in front of it. And then I believe the Barati family sold off to the present owner, who is a sheet metal fabricator and a contractor. My client has a purchase and sales agreement with that individual to purchase it, subject to the approval of a special permit with this board. We're mindful of the fact that any change of use in the town of Milford requires site plan review. That's part of your zoning code. Obviously, we did not go to the planning board first because this board's has the use authority, and therefore we seek your approval of a special permit. Again, I know that I'm very well aware of the West Street area. It's a mixed-use area. There is a significant amount of residential use on the site, but there is also other commercial use. As I said in my application, the package store is there, and there has been prior contractors' yards business at the site. We believe that this fits specifically within Milford's zoning bylaw relative to the change of a pre-existing use. And again, I would argue to this board that this has been a commercial use that long preceded the adoption of our zoning code. Mr. Santos is here today to answer any specific questions that the board has, but again, I think this is not someone new coming into town. This someone knows the regulations here in Milford, has had a successful Class 2 license, and recognizes the rights and responsibilities that go with that. So we're here to answer any further questions that you might have.
Thank you, Attorney Antonellis. With that, I'll turn it over to board members. Tim, I'll start down at the end with you.
You want mine?
Hello, there we go. Is the reason for the move just for a bigger space, better exposure?
It is primarily for the space that is more suitable to this particular use. So Mr. Santos has been looking for another site to make it more practical and functional. This building is a little bit bigger, and the availability and entrance and access are much better.
Thank you.
Just a couple questions. Now, he is in the tow business, correct?
Yes.
And how many tow trucks does this
I think
business?
he has 9 at this time. Is that right, Louis? 9 tow trucks registered here.
Okay, and so the square footage that down on Free Street allows the storage of those 9 trucks?
Yes.
And we're going to a bigger site, so that should not be an issue.
We do not anticipate an issue. That is one of the reasons why he's seeking to move, to have a little bit of more mobility on the site for storage and maneuverability of the cars that he brings in and out, yes.
Right, and the only thing he's also adding to this is the sale.
He has, I don't mean to interrupt, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yes, he has sale already. He has a present Class 2 license.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
How many cars does he currently have, Joe?
We figured about 15.
He has now, currently?
Oh, no.
You have too many?
I'm Luis Santos Jr., head of the Department of the Towing. But right now, sales we probably have about 17, and we feel comfortable at the 15.
That you currently display on
Correct,
site?
yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Hours of operation. You're going from a current location where it's busy down there, it's also busy up here, but from an hours of operation standpoint, can you give us an idea what those are currently?
As far as the automotive repair, I think it's at 5 o'clock. I know the towing, I can answer on the towing, but you can tell us on the automotive repair.
Automotive repair, 9 to 5, and then towing, it is 24/7, but at night from about 7 o'clock, we only have 2 trucks on.
You're on call?
On
more or
call,
less?
2 trucks, yeah, so the traffic would be 2 trucks, it wouldn't be all 9.
So your automotive repair and body shop, 9 to 5?
9 to 5, yeah.
Not 8 to 5?
No, usually not, what we have over
Because
there
if you're
right now-
going in at 8 o'clock now, we need to know.
Right now we go at 8, but yeah, usually 9 to 5, but we are asking for 8 to 5.
Okay, and that's Monday through?
Monday to Friday, and then Saturday we go in from 9 to 1.
Okay,
And
and Sunday's nothing?
Nothing, except the tow trucks, which we have.
That you run 24/7?
Correct,
anyways,
yeah.
okay.
During the day on Sunday, we have about 4 trucks on, and then from 6:30 to 7, we have 2 trucks overnight.
Okay.
You moving, just so I get this straight, you're moving stuff from Free Street up to West Street?
Yes,
So everything I saw down there today is gonna be going up to West Street?
that's correct. Free
It
Street,
is a little congested back there.
that's correct. And Free Street will be abandoned. That site
That'll
will be
be
given up.
empty.
That's correct.
That's all I've got.
Anybody in the audience care to be heard on this application? Sir, why don't you come on up to the microphone, please state your name?
Good evening. My name is Dan McCabe, my wife Lynette, and we live at 68 West Street. My driveway is immediately opposite the entrance to 69. Sometimes I sit there in my driveway for about 5 minutes trying to get out into the traffic, waiting for the two lights, one up by Shaw's and one down by Congress Street, to mediate so I can get out. I'm not concerned about the towing, the auto body. When we moved in 1980, Berardi Brothers was there, no issue. Then the welding gentleman and now Weather Shield, they've all been great neighbors. And I've also got a towing and auto body business 2 doors down from me. What I'm concerned about is the auto sales part of it, the additional traffic that's going to bring. I don't know if there's an impact on property values. I admit I'm not living in a gated community, but I still have a piece of property that I respect and try to take good care of. And you know, the idea of 15 to 20 used cars right across from my driveway, I'm just concerned about it. It's a concern for my wife and I. So that's my thoughts.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. McCabe. Anyone else care to be heard? Can you, I'm looking at the site plan because I've got the assessor's map, and it's a pretty skinny parcel, Joe. How many
Yes.
feet of frontage does this site actually have, do you know?
I think it's just like 65.
Right, so you can't really display any cars at the entrance, that's for sure.
And again, I appreciate the comments, and I'm actively involved, obviously, and I believe it's important that the abutters come out for these meetings. This, I believe, is an issue that would also be addressed at site plan, where we will be required to show the exact locations of the cars so that there is no intrusion of lights, et cetera, on the neighboring properties. So, obviously, we can't get there without your blessing to get to that point, but then we can't open again until we get a site plan approval. Right. So I do believe that I recognize the concerns of the abutter, and believe that those can also be addressed at site plan review. And to the extent that site plan review does not necessarily require notice to abutters, I would represent to this board that I would make certain, if you give me your contact information, then when I get notice of the site plan, that I will forward it to you for
That's
that
great.
hearing. And that takes place at the planning board.
That's great, thank you. Thank you for reaching out. Mr. McCabe, just taking a look at the site map that I'm looking at, I don't think there's any room really in the front to display any cars. It looks like it will be towards the building itself. But site plan will determine that, and I encourage you to work with Mr. Antonellis to be able to take a look at that.
And I just also want to point out that this is not a traditional used car parking lot. The Class 2 license is part indicative of this business because of the auto body aspect and the towing aspect. Sometimes they're taking cars that are repossessed, that have been conscripted, or somehow the owner has lost ownership of them, and without a Class 2 license, they could not then sell them. So it's not like it's an active, and I understand there's still car sales going on, but it's not the active part of their business. Their business is more actively involved in the towing and the repair.
Okay, great. Thank you. Pleasure of the board. Do I have a motion concerning the whether there's an approval subject to site plan approval with the operating hours?
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion to approve subject to the site plan approval by the planning board. I'll throw in the hours of operation, so at least we've got a guide to go by. My suggestion would be so why don't we have a second on the site plan approval? We have a second? All those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. I'd like to make a motion that the hours of operation run from Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 and Saturday from 8 to 1 o'clock, and no working, no hours of operation on Sunday with the exception of the 24/7 towing company that they currently have. Is there a second? Second by Charlie. All those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Antonellis.
Thank the board for their cooperation and also for scheduling this meeting on what I know is a busy night for you.
Thank you very much.
And I will get Mr. McCabe's address before I leave.
Great. All right. Thank you, Attorney Antonellis. Kelly, you got sign-in sheets for those? Yeah? Great, okay. And that's the second, great. Thank you. Okay, that being after 7:15, we'll entertain the application of the Gutierrez Company, a Delaware corporation with a principal address of 200 Summit Drive in Burlington, Mass., for a comprehensive permit pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 40B, in relation to an 80-acre parcel, more or less known as Stone Ridge and located on the westerly side of Cedar Street, north of US 495. The property is shown on the Milford Assessor Sheet 14, 15, 19, and 20 is parcels 2A, 3, and 4. The petitioner proposes to develop and construct a 272-unit rental apartment development on approximately 16.6 acres of land located off the Cedar Street. 75% will be at market rate units and 25% will be affordable units pursuant to the applicable provisions of the law and requirements of the financing agency. Have you got it on? You getting there?
Copy this onto this laptop. Do you want me to turn this on or no?
Turn it on. Is it on? Oh, sorry, that's on. Yeah, turn it on. For the benefit of the people in the audience, Attorney Moody will give you a brief overview concerning the 40B aspects so that we're finishing up on one right now, so we want people to understand the regulations and why this applicant is in front of us under the guidelines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, many of you may be through the other ones that have gone through the process or are going through the process right now. This is an application under what's called General Laws, Chapter 40B, and it allows the developer in certain situations where cities and towns don't reach a certain required minimum of low moderate income housing, which is basically 10%, those cities and towns that don't meet that, their zoning and other local requirements can effectively be overridden through this process. It's basically called a comprehensive permit, and the goal is that the applicant, who has to meet certain qualifications, which I'm sure they'll go through, who wants to apply to establish this kind of housing, can come to simply one board instead of all the various town boards and get what's called a comprehensive permit with waivers from what might otherwise be applicable in terms of zoning and other local requirements. We've had several in the past in Milford. We have a large one ongoing right now called Robsham Village, and this one is now in the process also. Milford is under the minimum that would allow a board to say basically no. Board can always say no, but the key is that there's an appeal to a state agency called the Housing Appeals Committee, which can override any local decision. That wouldn't be available if we were over the 10%, but we're not. So that's why this application is before this board. So with that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. With that, sir, please state your name and give us the overview of what you're proposing.
Certainly, thank you. For the record, Chris Rainier from Goulston and Stores on behalf of the applicant, the Gutierrez Company, and thank you for the overview, Mr. Moody. What I thought I'd do today is provide a bit of an overview, both of the project site, the applicant, and our proposal, and turn it over then to members of the team who can go into an overview, a little bit more detail. So I have with me here today Israel Lopez from the Gutierrez Company, Will Park from Sims Maney and McKay Associates, our civil engineer and landscape engineer, Alan States from Shesky Architects, and Liz Altman, our traffic engineer from Tech Engineering. So why don't I, if I go down, go to the next slide. Okay.
And for those of you, Matt Doyen from CEI, which is the zoning board's consultant, is also here tonight on a review.
Thank you. So I'll just speak briefly again on an overview in red, and we did bring some hard copies of our presentation for the board. If you'd like us to pass that out so you don't have to be spinning around. Okay.
That'd be great.
Seven copies, so it looks like you might be.
So this is a site with a long permitting history that Israel will get into along 495 and 85. The red outline there is a much bigger site than we're actually proposing to build on, but it gives a sense of what are we surrounded by, who are our butters, and where are we. Access will be provided off of 85, off of Cedar Street. As I said, there's a long history of attempts at office development here, and Israel will go through that. We thought it'd be helpful for this board. Much of that has been in front of the planning board, so this board may not be as familiar with it. So we'll let Israel walk through the extensive work that's happened. We know there have been some comment letters on the site. We'll be prepared to go into those in more detail in upcoming hearings. But one of the things that we've heard is this is an office park. Could this stay an office park? Office is a use we'd like to see. Unfortunately for us, we're not getting traction on developing office and have been trying for many years. We think this proposal in converting a small amount of it to multifamily use, bring a little bit more of a mixed use nature to the site, will help unlock the remainder of the site for office development. And I'll let Israel speak to that in more detail. As was mentioned, it's approximately 272 units of rental housing, 25% affordable, a mix of bedrooms with proposing 1.75 parking spaces per unit. With that, I'll let Israel get into a little bit more detail of the project site. We'd then like to turn it over to Will to go through the site design and some of the constraints, and you'll get a sense of the constraints when Israel does his permitting history. And then we can go to Alan on architecture and Liz on traffic. Of course, if the board would like, we can pause at any time to get into questions, or we could wait for questions at the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Again, for the record, my name is Israel Lopez with the Gutierrez Company. Keep it closer. Okay, we'll try. So as Chris mentioned, there's been a lot of permitting history. We've been working on this site for a very long time. And so I thought before getting into some of the specifics and getting into the details of the site and the project itself, it makes sense to just spend a couple of minutes to talk a little bit about that history and to talk a little bit about what were some of the drivers and why we are proposing a residential project for this site. And so in front of you and behind you on that slide, there's a slide that we've done that basically chronicles the permitting history, which began in 2002. We acquired the site in 2001, and then really goes through 2011. I think at that point we were so depressed that we didn't want to continue updating this slide any further. But nonetheless, we've obviously continued working on some of the permitting subsequent to 2012. And really, without getting into a lot of detail in terms of all of the different entitlements that we've obtained, both at the local, state level, just the fact that we've been at this so long, I think ought to tell you a lot about the type of company that the Gutierrez Company is, and the level of commitment that we have to this site. We've been very committed to this project from the very beginning, and we're committed to trying and create something on this site that will bring some value and some vitality to the site. And so we began in 2002, and through sort of the next 5 to 6 years through 2008, working with the Conservation Commission to get an order of condition, working with the planning board to get site plan approval. We got subdivision plan approval for the road that leads into the site. and really arrived at what was the initial site plan approval, which contemplated an office park of 625,000 square feet in 4 buildings. And what we wanted to do was make sure that we casted as wide a net as possible. And so each of the 4 buildings were of varying sizes, 300,000 square feet down to 80,000 square feet, so that depending on whatever your office requirement need was, we try to provide something for that particular user. We've developed over 10 million square feet. Many of the suburban office parks in and around 128, 495, Route 3, we've developed. And so we came up with this plan and continued working through 2008. As you probably recall, the market cratered right in 2008 and was in free fall for 2008, 2009, 2010. We didn't cut and run, so to speak. We didn't dump the site. Instead, we continued to invest significant time and energy and money to try and obtain the remaining permits. And so in between 2008 and say through the present day, we've worked with the Army Corps of Engineers. We've gotten the permits necessary from them. We've worked with the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. We've obtained a memorandum of agreement with them. And so, you know, we've done all of this work to try and bring to fruition an office development on this site. Unfortunately, that has not worked out, and the world has changed. A lot's happened since we started developing this project. The iPhone was invented, and BlackBerry died, you know, during the time that we've been working on this site. Blockbuster has gone bankrupt, and now Netflix, you know, is the king of the hill, so to speak, since we've been working on this site. And so the latest iteration of the project, or I should say in 2016, we worked with the planning board to try and introduce a mix of uses into the site. And it would have been our preference at the time to introduce retail and residential and a wide mix of uses that we saw at lots of the other suburban office parks that were also undergoing this kind of transformation. There wasn't an appetite to do that at the time, but we were successful in expanding the amount or the type of uses that were allowed within the business park so that we can include some wholesale usage at the site. And with doing that, we were able to bring in Restaurant Depot and kick off the development of the site. And so with that, we've begun construction along Deer Street, which is a subdivision road that leads into the site, and we've continued to market the site. And what the project that we're presenting here tonight acknowledges with the introduction of residential is that the world has really changed, and suburban office parks have evolved in the time that we began permitting this site. And we know this because we've been a part of that. We've done it at other commercial office parks that we've developed in Wilmington, in Boxborough, in Marlborough, in Westford, right? And you can also see that by simply driving up 128 or Route 3 or 495 and looking at any interchange and seeing all of the suburban traditional residential projects that have gone up either as part of an office park or contiguous to an office park. And so we don't think we have some secret magic formula or crystal ball, but this is what the market has transitioned to. And so we think we're very committed to the site. We think this is a great location to introduce some residential. We do not believe that this site will garner any office interest without a catalyst to bring some activity to the site. And we're committed to working cooperatively with the town to try and bring something to the site. The site has been extensively engineered. Every square foot of this site has been looked at and reviewed and peer reviewed. And we don't think we're going to propose anything controversial to the site. And so we're very optimistic that we'll be able to work with the board and address any concerns. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Will Park. with our site and civil engineering firm to talk a little bit more specifically about the project.
Hello, Will Park from SMA out of Cambridge. So Chris introduced the site location, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with. Here's the remainder of the Stone Ridge site that hasn't been occupied by Restaurant Depot. To the west, there's 495 northbound. To the south, there is Cedar Street, or Route 85. And to the north and east of the project is forested land that I believe is owned by the town. So what we're looking at here is the constraints plan that was submitted. It's really the result of the almost 2 decades of permitting that both Chris and Israel mentioned. The green is a conservation restriction area totaling 29 acres. That was the result of extensive work with natural heritage, and after also obtaining a conservation and management permit. The blue areas are wetland resource areas, the ones that are located outside of conservation areas. Included in those is Wetland 2, which is a bordering vegetated wetland. Wetland 3, which is also a bordering vegetated wetland. Wetland 5 here, right against the interstate, that is a isolated land subject to flooding. And then Wetland 9, which you will see later, is in the location of our project, which is characterized as a forested depression and is a locally regulated, isolated, vegetated wetland. You really can't tell that you're standing in the middle of a wetland when you're out there on site.
Any of these man-made?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Is this mapping, the current wetland mapping, has this been updated since '07? Is this the '07 report?
Yes, it is.
So has it been updated since? Wetlands been updated since or no?
No, I don't believe so.
Not yet? Okay.
No. And then lastly on this plan, in pink is several cultural resource areas that Israel mentioned. We worked with the Army Corps of Engineers, Massachusetts Commission on Indian Affairs, the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe, and the Massachusetts Historical Commission. Next is the existing conditions plan for the site, a little bit zoomed into where our residential project will be located. I think important on this plan is to note the contours going through the site. I'll just track this one going through here. As you can see, if you can picture our residential project, it really follows these contours going through the site. Surprisingly, this, what we call the rear building pad, is about 5 to 10 feet higher than this area right here, and you'll see later that influenced the site design. And since this is a clean plan, you'll see that our work, our project, similar to the previously approved project. Oh, I should mention that the high point is generally down here near Wetland 5, near the interstate, and the topography flows down either to the east, north is to the left on this plan. Either flows east towards Deer Brook or south towards Wetlands 2 and 3 and eventually the Charles River. Our project, similar to previously approved projects, will be working in the buffer zones of Wetlands 2 and 5 and Wetland 9. The disturbance of Wetland 9 in its entirety and the construction schedule and monitoring of Wetland Replacement Area 2, which is near the rear of the site, will be consistent with the previous order of conditions. So the site design itself, we became very familiar with the permitting history and know the site very well and laid out the proposed design that you see here, respecting the conservation areas, the cultural resources, and the wetlands, and of course the topography. Specifically, the project respects the town's wetland 15-foot no disturb zone, and the limit of work is consistent, if not identical, to the previous approvals. So, as Israel mentioned, Deer Street and Deer Street Extension are currently under construction. We designed the site so there's dual entrances off the access drive, and then a loop road around the entirety of the project so that the residential buildings generally have full 360-degree access. We installed 2 rows of parking here. This Deer Street extension really did a great job of following the natural topography up this slope at roughly 4%. As you can see, these contours pretty much straddle contours underneath them. Contour goes in this side and goes out the other, existing. So all the residential buildings are located on along a contour, and then each building has entrances in the front and rear, so they're essentially flat, and then the parking lots in the inward side will be in fill areas, and on the rear will be in cut areas. And to make up this elevation increase along here, we had to almost mimic that 4% slope here to establish the finished grade of this building. We also didn't want the residential buildings to be too much different in their finished floor elevations. Currently, building A is at elevation 340, building B is 347. Again, this back building pad is higher, and building C is 346. The elevation change is made up in this little throat here, and we've also anchored this whole site and the linear layout of them with a pool area and amenities in the center. Alan will describe in more detail. There's an interior amenity area here as part of building B that will connect to the pool area, grills, and other amenities for all users of the site. So we've met with the fire department and submitted fire truck turning diagrams to display that their new fire truck that they're expecting shortly can fully circulate the site and can zigzag through these various intermediate driveways. We've also submitted an exhibit to them showing their new truck's ladder reach and height. They requested that we show it can reach the 5th floor windows. The exhibit we submitted to them, we believe, shows that they can successfully reach the roof high point, which is generally 7 feet higher than the 5th floor windows. Also on the site, there's 4 garages here, here, here. I can do that again. One when you enter the site for building A, another one associated generally with building A, in the rear for building B, and again in the front for building C. Each of these garages, we found on these projects, bike storage is becoming more important, so each one has a dedicated spot or 10 by 20 space for bike storage. Also, there's a maintenance shed right here for the facility operation, and a separate mail room right here where it's located in a place where people can either park or quickly pull over, run and get their mail and move on. I've mentioned there's a pool here that will have amenities, grills, tetherball. Who knows, we'll get into the detailed design of this. We have a really great landscape architecture group at SMMA who has a lot of experience designing those. And there'll also be a top play area, either within this fenced pool area, or we prefer the location between buildings B and C. Next.
I got a quick question on the garages. Those garages, are those open?
They will be closed.
They're fully closed structures?
Closed. That's a really good amenity and can increase rent prices for the owner.
So there'll be an additional charge, of course, for those? for a unit, if someone wants a garage?
Yes, absolutely.
So what do you anticipate, how many garages are here, do you know, count-wise?
There's 4 of them. I think there's 38 total spaces.
What are the size of those, of the bays? Do you know what the size of the bays are approximately?
Roughly the normal depth of 18 feet and maybe a few
Like a
feet
parking
wider, like
space?
12.
Okay.
18 by 12. Their full buildings have foundations down to frost depth and everything. I'll quickly show this slide. It's right out of our technical report. It's a zoning table of the required zoning in the business park district and what we are providing. Everything from minimum lot requirements, yard requirements, max building, minimum open space, height and landscape requirements. We exceed the requirements, so we will not be requesting any waivers for dimensional requirements.
What's the overall square footage for the 3 buildings?
Ask the architect.
Approximately?
300.
315,000? And what did you have there before for building square footage for an office building? 200? 250 before? And one last question, the restaurant depot is 63,000. How many square feet was planned there before? 80? 80,000? Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No problem. Along those lines, it should be noted that this area of land where the residential project is proposed exceeds the previous approval's open space calculations. There's more open space landscape area than the previous office development in these building pads. Next is the site utility plan. I apologize, it's kind of hard to read here. Generally, water, sewer, electrical, telecom, and gas are all being installed in Deer Street and are stubbed right around this location just beyond the restaurant depot second driveway. Our project proposes simply to go down the Deer Street extension and connect to those stubs, and we will have manholes and stubs ready for future office connections, just as it was all originally proposed. We acknowledge that we will need to resolve the water availability issue, and we've tried to meet with the Milford Water Company, and we will continue to seek that out.
Just one question. Are you in receipt of the Tate and Howard study that was done relative to your project that was done for the Milford Water Company as yet?
We did receive the roughly 8 to 10 page comment letter.
Have you gone through that?
We have.
What is your takeaway from that?
Do we want to answer that right now?
I think we're still working our way through that letter in the implications. Obviously, it's an issue we know needs to be addressed, but not prepared to address it at this point.
Okay, thank you.
It was a nice letter, well written. So stormwater. Generally, the entire Stone Ridge development had roughly 6 design points, I think, in its original stormwater study. This project only directly affects 2 of them. One of them is design point 1, which is wetland 3 down here near the Charles River. Design point 2 is this wetland 2 area that will discharge under Deer Street Extension to Deer Brook and eventual discharge to Charles River. And then we had to account for the future office building that was going to go through this site. In this area, we've designed a bypass pipe so that this building pad and this building pad, whatever their final lot configuration is, they will provide their own stormwater, and we've provided a bypass pipe, so we're not designing for those future unknowns at this time. We're using 3 different stormwater BMPs on the site. Here's a very nicely designed constructed wetland It is cut and paste directly from the previous project, everything down from the wetland plant selection. We simply just modified the outlet constructor orifices to make the peak runoff and various other treatment requirements work. Similarly, there's an infiltration system over here, a surface infiltration system. Same thing, cut and pasted from the previous submission. The new BMP for the project is a subsurface detention structure right here. Generally, this area of the site and Building A discharges to the constructed wetland. The site here, no buildings, discharge to the subsurface basin. Buildings B and C and the entire site in this area discharges to the infiltration basin. Oh, sorry, I thought you had a question. Lastly, sanitary sewer. So the previously approved project, the 625,000 square foot office use, the design flow based on Mass DP Title V design flows proposed 46,875 gallons per day. Those flows received a Massachusetts DEP sewer connection permit in April of 2009. The associated peak flow, which is what the pump station and pumps are based on, was 195 gallons per minute. The currently proposed project, which is the restaurant depot and the residential development, has a slightly higher design flow of 50,014 gallons per day. We will be submitting a Class 1 residential connection permit to the ZBA for this minor increase, which is roughly a 7% increase. And then the pump station, so I'll probably answer the question that everyone wants to know.
Which is, have you met with the sewer department on these calculation flows yet?
We've reached out but have not met.
Okay, so you'll do that?
Yes, we look forward to reviewing these with the sewer department.
We do, by the way, for the people in the audience, we do have town engineer on here. We also have the sewer commissioner on here. We also have the board of selectmen here. So we have a few people here that if they need to comment, they're certainly welcome to.
So, okay, that's not the question I was expecting. I thought you were going to ask, how is it possible the design flow goes up, but the peak flow goes down?
Correct, that was going to be my next
Right.
question.
And that is based on, there's detailed calculations based on the peak factor. Every use, office, residential, lab has different peaking factors of 3 or 4 or 2 or 1.5. Saying worst case scenario, if everyone flushes a toilet at the same time, what does that pump station need to handle? There's also operating hours. A office, the operating hours are roughly 12 hours. Residential is about 18. So when you do all the math, and this is all consistent with the previous approval, the peak flow for the currently proposed project actually decreases. So based on all this, the pump station, the dual pumps within the pump station and the conveyance system are all adequately sized for the currently proposed projects. I said there's dual pumps. They go down into the pump chamber. They're installed on these slide rails, and it's not until the office, over 30,000 square feet of office is constructed until those pumps are not sized properly. And at that time, you simply raise a chain, take the pumps off. Well, they're dual pumps, so one of them is always working. You take one of them off and simply swap it out for the next larger pump model. And these are very good pumps that the Gutierrez company has installed, and it should be noted that Gutierrez company will own and operate the pump station and force main. And that's actually all.
Yeah, I've got a question, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Just looking at this, this overhead, the 625,000 square foot office use, was that the total office park as it was originally planned?
Correct.
So the currently proposed, though, does not include the other portions of the office park. So that's 625,000 versus the currently proposed is really not, the currently proposed would not be the full development of the site.
Yes, and in the technical report I submitted, actually, I don't need it. I included a summary of currently proposed short-term, which is what we're looking at here, and then currently proposed long-term. And yes, those design flows do go up.
It's a full build-out of the site. The design flows would be significantly different than what you're showing up there for the proposed.
Correct, and we've run those calculations as well and believe that the next size up pumps, 7.5 horsepower, 350-gallon pumps, perfectly handle the full office build-out, and the pump station operates perfectly fine.
Okay, you need to work with our sewer superintendent on that, who I think has a question.
Yes, we will.
John, can you comment on that? If you would, please. So the wet well and the pumps? In stages. Okay, you're sending that over, correct? You'll be sending that to us? Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That was it. We will review our calculations with the sewer commissioner and any peer reviewer if chosen.
Great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You have someone else that's going to step up?
Yep. Next is Alan States, from the architect from Shesky Architects.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Al. You're in the hot seat now. Be careful. We got the matches burning over there.
Hello. I'm Alan States from Shesky Architects down in Quincy, Mass. We, unlike Will, are pretty much at the beginning of our part of the project. So what we're showing tonight is concepts for the buildings on the site. Nothing is finalized. We haven't gotten into marketing with or meeting with the owners about what type of materials, where they want the materials, what the amenities are, but we have ideas that as the project develops, we would develop them also. This view here is where you turn onto the site from Deer Street as you get up to the top of the hill. The first building on the lower portion of the drawing there, you can see where it says Building A, and the arrow is pointing at where the view is taken from. The other two buildings, Building B and C, similar to this, they'd be off to the left from this photograph. What I'll do now is move to the floor plan, typical floor plan of the project. This one is also Building A, the first one that you saw in the rendering there. What we've done is we've got a double-loaded corridor system in all three buildings, a mix between the buildings of all the unit types. Every building's elevator access, the fire stairs. Two of the buildings, the two end buildings, have roughly a footprint of 20 units per floor for 5 stories. The middle building is a footprint of about 16 units per floor, and that goes 5 stories also. So we end up with a total of the 272 units with a breakdown of one bedroom is being a little bit over 50%. 2 bedrooms are about 37%, and the 3 bedroom units are 10% of the totals on the site. And then within that, we also have handicap accessible units. The whole buildings are accessible, but then 5% are what's called Group 2 by the Mass Architectural Access Board, which is fully handicap accessible with the grab bars and the turning radiuses in bathrooms and specialized kitchens. And then they're mixed throughout the 3 buildings, as will the affordable units. They get mixed throughout the buildings. It's not like one building gets all of the lesser units. Everything's equalized throughout the whole project. We'll go to the elevations. Okay. Again, this is really rough elevations. We're starting the project. Right now, what we've got, the building, it's 5 stories on grade. We're not doing a podium like a lot of residential projects. So this is from ground up 5 stories. It's wood framed. It's type 3 construction instead of typical residential, which is type 5, a lesser construction. This one has a higher fire ratings, and the exterior walls on this building are rated also for fire. It's fully sprinklered systems to an NFPA 13, which is equal to the commercial code for commercial buildings for sprinkler systems, yes?
Yeah, lately, well, over the last year, we've seen the issue of constructed lumber being used in buildings and the fire.
I'm sorry, what kind of lumber?
Constructed lumber, where they've got the laminated plywood and then they make an I-beam out of it, and those buildings, some of them that have had it, have had some problems. I'm just wondering what type of construction you're looking at here.
We generally do truss construction. It's panelized bearing walls within the building, and then 18-inch deep trusses spanning from bearing wall to bearing wall, and that runs all the way up. The first floor is slab on grade, concrete slab on grade with the foundations, and then the 4 stories above that are all the wood frame with trusses, though.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, the sprinkler systems, the whole fire systems are state of the art, which is required by code here for
The fire department comment on the fire system, if you were required to have a pump. Did you get that deep yet with the fire department?
No, we haven't.
Okay.
I don't think at least we haven't seen, or our engineers aren't on board yet, but we haven't seen any flow tests.
All right, that'll come through. Okay.
If the flow test requires it, then it goes in with the generator and everything. That's a requirement of that. The exterior of the buildings, we're looking at, because of the rating of the exterior walls, it's probably a combination of different fiber cement materials, which look like wood, but they have some wood in them, but they're not really wood anymore. We'll have some accent of brick around the base of the building. And what we're trying to do, the concept that shows here is break down the materials, divide it up so that the whole building doesn't just read as one long block, that it's a little bit more like a village when you get the 3 buildings. We are planning amenities on the first floor of the middle building, which will be equal distance from the other 2 buildings. Typically in buildings like this, we have like a coffee bar, a lounge, fitness center, that type of stuff. We haven't gotten, again, with marketing people from the owner, we haven't gotten into specifically what they would look for in this project. I think, yeah, that's it for mine. Okay, any questions?
Not at this time on the architectural. We know that it's a preliminary and things can change, so the concept is nice. Having some visual elevations from side entries and an overview kind of flows through the site. Would be nice to have that full aerial, but we kind of get the challenge of where you are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Liz, the traffic engineer, is next.
Oh boy. Okay, thanks. I'm Liz Altman with TEC. This overall site has a previous MEPA approval and Section 61 findings for the entire site. The Section 61 finding also outlines off-site mitigation required with several different development phases. So our first charge was to determine whether the residential land use added to the restaurant depot moved us from phase 1 mitigation to phase 2 mitigation. So phase 1 of the MEPA approval was for 150,000 square foot of office. And the off-site mitigation associated with that within the approval was for the intersection of Deer Street with Cedar Street, obviously that main access street, constructing that intersection, and the northbound left turn lane on Cedar Street. That's under construction currently. And also to look at the timing changes at the Route 495 northbound off-ramp intersection with Cedar Street, just to evaluate whether timing changes are needed to accommodate the new traffic for the 150,000 square foot of office. So within our traffic analysis, we ran all the numbers, and we determined that the traffic generated by the 272 apartments added to the restaurant depot during the morning and evening peak hours is less than the 150,000 square foot office that was approved in phase 1 of the MEPA permit. So we don't trigger moving into the phase 2 off-site mitigation. Basically, our traffic analysis determined that the peak hour trips are less than projected in phase 1 in the MEPA approval. We performed analysis at the Cedar Street intersection with Deer Street, and that intersection continues to operate with acceptable levels of service in the unsignalized condition with the northbound left turn lane with the addition of the residential trips, and the intersection of the Route 495 northbound ramps. That intersection with Cedar Street, no timing changes or improvements are necessary at that intersection. There's lots of capacity. So no further improvements are necessary, no modification of the timings, and no further phase 2 study is required at this time.
And that you have, we'll have a copy. This is the report that you've provided in front of us?
Yes.
Okay, we'll get that to our consultant for comment.
Absolutely. And the last thing I am to mention is that the site is currently proposing 476 parking spaces. That is at a ratio of 1.75 spaces per unit. I'll just mention that that exceeds the parking supply recommended by the Institute of Transportation Engineers in their parking generation manual for mid-sized apartment buildings in suburban areas. So that's all I have today. I'm the short and sweet for traffic.
Just one question.
Sure.
I believe that Deer Street goes across the Milford Bike Trail, correct?
Yes.
And what recommendations are you making for when people are going with their bikes and coming up the Deer Street? What is the safety measures being taken there?
It's similar to where the path crosses the southbound ramps. Okay. They'll have a stop sign. They'll have to watch for, just make sure that there's no traffic coming, vehicular traffic is coming.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And again, I'm going to open it up to the zoning board for a couple of comments, and I want to open it up to the public. I just clearly want to hear from the public as well. And I'm sure this board realizes the aspects of what the Gutierrez Company has gone through on the permitting process for this project over a number of years. So we're sensitive to the fact of what you've been trying to do with this site since going back to probably 07 maybe. I was disheartened not to hear that in this application that some of the information wasn't updated, for instance, wetland flaggings. Sometimes wetland grows. So, you know, I think this board would like to see an updated evaluation of the wetlands being updated from, because they have not been updated to 07. A couple of the other comments, and I think the planning board had the same comments, whether it's through the town engineer or the town planner, when this was originally approved, and it does trigger, and the phase process that she explained by square footage does trigger certain criterias for traffic mitigation, for improvements, and so on. I don't think anybody feathered down the road, 15 years later, and having an 1,800 square foot dead-end road that's tied into a residential housing development. So we're going to need to dive in a little bit with that process. Town of Milford has never really gone down the road with dead ends beyond 750 feet. And if it did happen, we try to connect it. This is a business park. This was permitted this way. It was considered a job growth and job creation. That did not happen. They're allowed under the law to come in with a project like this, providing they have the proper utilities that they can get, water and sewer, and we know that both of those are going to be something that they're going to need to have. I think this board, since this is the first hearing, I've got a list of probably questions, and that's the reason why I asked. We were replacing a 250,000 square foot office building with 315,000 square feet of a residential application. There was a 90,000 square foot building earmarked on the first project, the first building, and it ended up being 63,000 square feet of restaurant depot, which, by the way, I think the town of Milford cooperated very well to be able to start this development moving forward, and that change, or that special permit for restaurant depot, helped this process start moving. And the Gertier's company has been good neighbors to the town of Milford to date, and I don't see that changing. Some of their waivers that they're looking for, some are fine, some I have a problem with. So I think we just need to collectively gather as much information as we can. Most of their studies have been done over the course of years. So we're not recreating a wheel, we're updating information that we already have, and our consultants are on board to assist us and help us through that process. I've asked questions about the garages and the sheds. A little bit different, we haven't seen that before. I don't see an awful lot of recreational aspects on this site versus maybe one or two of the others that we've seen. So there's some things that are different than others. The buildings, they have like an institutional look to them. These are just a few things. I was concerned about the sewer pump station. I'm familiar with the sewer pump stations, and I know our sewer commissioner and superintendent is pretty knowledgeable when it comes to upgrading impellers and upgrading pumps. And I'm relying on the sewer department to drive that boat on behalf of this board because we've seen it and we've done it so many times. So we've got some very capable department heads that back up and support this. I think in cooperation, we can be proud of what we're trying to do. We understand the challenges of the company and how to fill, 300,000-400,000 square feet of office space when there's no need, or there's no desire, or there's no actual great giant tenant out there looking to bring in 1,000 jobs. Traffic and safety are my biggest concerns. Density is a concern. Quite frankly, the way this is laid out in an L shape is not ideal as far as what I'm seeing. I think there could have been a better, maybe a little bit better way of trying to lay these buildings out with the buffers that are around. But again, they're working with what they have. There's topographical issues and changes. There's wetlands. That's the reason why it hasn't been updated since '07. I think that has to be done. So with that, those are just some of my comments. What we will be doing as we go along is we're going to schedule hearings on certain criteria. So the next meeting will probably be, we'll be focusing on water and sewer. And then if it's okay with the company, with the Gertier's company, we can go with water and sewer, get through that phase. Maybe the next one would be, what do we put down there? Traffic and, traffic aspects with the entrance. Maybe the roadway, sidewalk, that type of thing. So with that, I'm just going to send it over to my board members if they have a quick comment, and then I want to open it up to the public for any concerns that you may have. Charlie?
I'm all set right now.
I have just one request, Mr. Chairman. at our next water surge meeting. I'd like the head of the water company here, and we need to know where this water is going to come from.
Okay.
It's as simple as that.
Okay.
That includes for the surge, for everything.
Okay. Bob? Okay, with that, would someone in the audience want to, please don't be afraid. Come on up, Reno. Please do. Reno DeLuzio. There should be a mic right there for you, Reno.
I don't know if I need it, but I'll use it.
You have a guideline?
Yeah, right. He's got.
Okay. By the way, this is Reno DeLuzio. He's chairman of the Upper Charles Trail.
Chairman of the Upper Charles Trail Committee, and I live at 148 Walden Way. I have a letter here from the board. You know, when this property was going to be developed as a commercial venture, pedestrian traffic to the bike trail wasn't an issue, but now it's going to be residential, 273 occupants, and I'm sure if history is any guide, this bike trail is very popular. It's going to be a lot of traffic, pedestrian and bicycle traffic from the residential complex to the trail. So the only thing that the committee is concerned about at this point is to make sure that access corridor is safe. And I offer in this letter the Massachusetts Department of Transportation's minimum trail width for bike safety, for pedestrians and bicyclists. Two-way traffic is 8 feet. So I offer that as a recommendation. If possible, this access sidewalk from the residential community to the bike trail at the crossing at Deer Street should be 8 feet wide.
Okay, thank you, Reno. That was a good comment. By the way, for the people in the audience, the planning board has sent off this afternoon some response concerning some of what they covered. They apparently looked at this last night, I believe. It's already on the website? Okay, so these comments are on the town's website. Just to give you a quick overview of one of their comments, which was comment number 4. The project is associated with a definitive subdivision approval. The subdivision is currently under construction and is not complete. The subdivision is associated with many different aspects that were approved by the planning board and agreed upon by the owner. One of the main items is the traffic/street improvements at the intersection of Deer Street and Cedar Street, Route 85. The owner applicant is bound by these approvals, as indicated, associated with the definitive subdivision. If any one of these items change, then the applicant would need to modify the subdivision by submitting it back to the planning board. What will be the final disposition of the road and its infrastructure is a question mark, and that's what they're asking. What type of association will be in place for future maintenance of the roadway, and also that goes along with the sewer. One other aspect that they questioned was the site was originally designed and approved for a business park use, not a residential use. The site is at the end of an 1,800-foot long dead end, which includes a bridge over the Charles River. This long dead end with residential units posed some safety concerns. If the town planning board was aware of a residential units at the end of this very long dead end, the final subdivision may have been designed differently. The dead end road does not have a typical cul-de-sac for emergency vehicles to safely turn around. In place of a typical cul-de-sac turnaround, there was a dedicated travel lane/loop driveway system, separate from the parking areas, that did provide safe access to the building sites from the end of Deer Street. This long dead end with the current design does not complement a residential development. If the Charles River was to ever been compromised and the bridge gets compromised, there's 272 residential units will have no access to get out. So those are just some of the comments that we're already getting in from the planning board, town engineer, town planner. Those will continue to come in as they review some of the documentation. We as well will continue to get comments from our consultant, CEI. So this starts to trigger a multitude of a lot of information that's coming in. More importantly, that information has to be methodically looked at, dissected, reviewed, and commented on. So this is why the process is put in place, and hopefully with the cooperation of everyone involved, the end result will be favorable to both parties, which also includes the residents in the town of Milford. With that, does anybody else care to be heard? Yes, sir. Yeah, it should be right up on the town website. We'll make sure that everyone has a copy. Right. And we try to upload it as soon as possible. So, and if you don't have a computer, let us know. We'll be able to try and get you copies of that. Yes, ma'am. Come on up, state your name, please.
I'm Ann Lamontagne from the Milford Historical Commission. And we do have an interest, but not as great as the water and the traffic, that's for sure. But there were early American farmsteads down there, which are foundations from the McDavitt and Shea and Cheney farms. And the Mass Historical realized these are historical. And also there's a quartz quarry down there that is an archaeological site. So the Mass Historical has also evaluated the property. But it is our job to identify, evaluate, and adopt a feasible alternative to avoid, minimize, mitigate the adverse effects to any historical site or archaeological site. So our request is to protect some of the projects that are still there. I understand when they already did Deer Brook that some of it has been compromised, which we were aware it was going to be. But my question is, I'd like to know what is remaining and how it will be protected in the future. Thank you.
Can someone answer her question right now? Or do you need more information?
So I'm just trying to find the exact permit and the date that we obtained it. But just generally, as a general overview, we have worked with the Mass Historical Society. We've worked with a number of different parties to come up with an avoidance and protection plan to delineate the culturally sensitive areas on the site, including the McDivitt Farm. There are actually, I believe, 5 or 6 different locations on the site that are culturally significant. All of those sites have been contained within the conservation and management permit within the conservation area. That's now part of this conservation and management permit, which we obtained from Mass Historical Society, basically protecting those areas. There's a very detailed work plan that goes along with, that details how those sites are to be protected as the different phases of construction evolve. So we can certainly provide more information and more detail.
Yes, could you provide a copy of that to the zoning board, and we can try and get it, and I'd like to get her a copy as well.
Certainly. Sure.
When we leave, would you trade information with each other so that you can get them the proper information that they need? And also a copy to the board would be helpful. Thank you. Anyone else care to be heard? Please, Meg.
For the record, Mike Walsh, member of the Milford Board of Selectmen. I want to say thank you to all of you for coming and putting on this beautiful presentation. But as an elected member of the Milford Board of Selectmen, I have a responsibility to protect the interest of the people in this community. And I find it very disheartening that you come here tonight and you don't have anything to support the water that's going to be used to go into this project. Everybody knows that every single year we have water restrictions in this community right now. And I think it's imperative that the next time you come back to us in this community, that you bring some documentation that shows us that the town of Milford, the present water company, can support the water needs that are going to be used in this project. Because there's a lot of people in this community right now that are very, very frustrated that every time they try to run their irrigation systems, every time they try and wash their cars, every time they try to water their gardens, they can't. So again, I ask you, the next time you come before us, and I hope you bring the water company, that you give us the statistics that we need to make the decision to protect the people in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it very much. That's one of the major requirements, of course. Anyone else care to be heard? Okay, with that, if there's no other questions, I'd like to, do you have any questions, board members? CEI, have any comments at this point? Feel free. You're younger, you have to get up.
Just a quick question, maybe not totally fair since this drawing wasn't presented tonight, but I noticed that on one of the drawings that building A seems like it's falling over one of the wetlands, and in the report, I think it said that there wasn't any impacts to wetlands, or it's maintaining the 15-foot buffer. So, okay. Yeah, that was it.
I'll look at the language of the technical report, but our wetland disturbances are consistent with the previous order of conditions. It does respect the 15-foot no disturb, has the same, roughly the same limit of work, but it does fill wetland 9 in its entirety. It's a forested depression. I didn't see a single wetland plant when we were out there. And that, like Israel said, this project started with the Conservation Commission, and it was determined that with both the Conservation Commission and the Army Corps that they didn't have jurisdiction, and that was settled a while ago, so we're just consistent with that.
We should have a copy of it anyways on a file, right? We should get a copy of the order of conditions. Why don't we do that, just so that we have it, because it's under the master plan?
Yeah, sorry, I should go into more detail on that. We're not simply filling it on this plan. This plan does show 2 mitigation wetland replication areas. I believe there's actually another one over here that's not shown on this exhibit. But because we're filling, consistent with the previous order of conditions, this wetland here, we are constructing these 2 wetland replication areas, I believe at a 2-to-1 mitigation ratio. And it does say in the technical report that it's very prescriptive in those order conditions, the special conditions attached to them, the schedule in which this is allowed to be disturbed and this is constructed. I don't have it memorized, but I believe that this has to start and be substantially stabilized with growth before this one can be altered. And we're obviously happy to provide that. It's clearly spelled out in the previous order.
Just, yeah, since this has been permitted, at least we'll have it for the file and we'll be able to review it. That'd be great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Do you have any other questions from the Gertie's company? What we'd like to do, if it's okay with you, we'd like to schedule the next hearing. Yeah, we're going to have a couple of them, so we can dedicate those to certain aspects, if that works for you. How's the 16th, 3 or 4 weeks, which is a Wednesday? May 16th? How's that work on your schedule? Board members, how's that work? It's probably not good for you guys. All right, if we can focus on May 16th, we'll focus that meeting on water and sewer. If there are any documents, I want to preface this because it happened at the last hearing we had, when we started the last hearing. We'd appreciate not getting information the afternoon before the hearing. We need enough time to dissect the information. Otherwise, we're not talking about it and we're just going to delay it. So the more information as we request or we need something, the sooner you can get it to us, the better off I think we'll all be, so we'll be able to address it in the meeting. But anything that comes in the afternoon, before the night of the meeting is useless to us, because we're just not going to be able to react on it. So if that would be helpful. So if we could go to the 16th, and then the following month, which is, wow, we're into June. What's that bring us to, Jerry? We can go to the 6th, June 6th, which is a Wednesday. Does that work? I want to do, yes, actually, you're right, traffic.
Well, if I could propose, we know that water certainly has been an issue for the other project, and we want to make sure we have enough time to meet with the water department and work through those issues. If we're able to flip and do traffic on the 16th and then do water and sewer on the 6th, that might give us more time to make sure that we can come in.
That's fine.
Okay.
That gives you enough time to,
Okay.
it gives you it gives you almost 2 months to work on it.
Thank
So
you.
we'll do traffic on the 6th, water and sewer. I'm sorry. We will do traffic on the 16th. We will do water and sewer on the 6th. I'd like to do site, we're into July. Are you capable of doing site on the 20th of June?
Yes, sir.
Overall site? Okay. And if we can, why don't we stick with those dates right now?
Thank you.
Melissa, can you post those on the website? Perfect. So the residents have an opportunity to hit those dates. Town departments, those dates okay? All right. If we need to trickle over some more information, please do. Make sure that we have all your information. That would be helpful. So communication would be a lot more direct and easier. Okay?
Yeah, just the other point, and our selectman brought it up. Obviously, the water is a big issue. And I've reviewed the Tate and Howard letter. Now, that is what the water company relies on. They're relying on their engineers to explain to everyone what is needed. And so I think it would be very helpful for you and for the board and for other concerned people to take that letter and look at your solutions relative to what's said in that letter versus you coming up with a plan. If we can't connect your plan with the Tate and Howard, we're all going to sit here and spin our wheels. And I think that you'd be doing yourself a favor if you did that. Okay?
Thank you.
And that should give you enough time also with the sewer, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, any other questions, comments?
I had one.
Sure.
Just procedurally, so we keep your consultant involved and town agencies involved. What's the best method of communication? Should we go directly to town
Go right to town council.
Run everything through
And
you?
then, yeah.
Okay.
And then he'll dissipate from there.
Okay.
Great,
Thank you.
super. With that, yes, ma'am. Yes. Yeah.
It's, you go to the Town of Milford website, and for each of these 40B projects has their own spot. Click on that, and you'll have all the documents that we have on that, on each one of them.
And feel free to call us with any questions.
Let me know, but they should be there.
They should all be there. We try to upload as soon as we can. Okay, with that, I thank you all for coming tonight. Good first meeting, and I appreciate all the residents that have shown up, and of course, department heads, and nice to see the Board of Selectmen over here, Michael. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Should we
Good night.
vote to continue to
Yeah,
formally to
we
the
are.
16th?
Do we have a motion to continue to the 16th? All in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Congratulations. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. Good night.